Gotcha.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so on behalf of Sakya Monastery, we would like to welcome you all to tonight's Women in Buddhism presentation.
No.
What? Oh, sorry. Okay, I heard something. Our presenter tonight is Elisabeth Benard. She is a retired professor from the University of Puget Sound and author of several books, including the book she's discussing with us tonight, the Sakya Jetsumas. We ask that everybody keep themselves muted. Elisabeth will be giving a presentation, and then afterwards there'll be a time for a question and answers. So if you have any questions, please post them in the chat. And we ask that maybe only post questions in the chat, so it doesn't get too hard to read through when we get to that point in time. So Elisabeth, I apologize for my introduction, but here she is. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. I'm delighted to see everybody, and I see a lot of people from New York, my old friends. So thank you so very much for coming, even so late for you, but I appreciate it very much. So yeah, we can get started. I have to admit, this is my first Zoom presentation, so bear with me if I mess up a little bit, but Teresa has been a great help setting this up. We've tried to practice a few times, so if anything goes wrong, it's my fault. So I'm going to try to do the PowerPoint, I think. Let's start with that, okay? And so can everybody see that? Yeah? I guess so. All right, so this is the
PowerPoint.
Screen, share screen.
Yes, did you share screen?
She needs to share the screen.
Okay, I thought I made a mistake already. Okay, let's go back.
Once we get that, that's it.
Yeah, take your time, take your time. People are still coming in, so take your time.
Yes.
All right. Now I'm sharing the screen.
I don't see it, do you?
Oh,
here
there it is. Yay.
That's it. Yay.
Okay.
We are on. Okay.
All right. So your series of lectures are going to be about women in all of Buddhism. I could see from the discussion that's going to be next week. But this is particularly just about the women in the Sakya Khon family, not anybody else. And the two groups of women that you find in the Sakya Khon family are the Damos, who are the wives, and the Jetsumas, who are the daughters. All right, let's see if I do this right. Okay, so as you know, I wrote a book and it was published recently. And people started asking me, well, how did you get started? You know, what was your inspiration behind it and everything? I have to say, it started with two women, a Damo and a Jetsuma. And the Damo came first, and this Damo is Damo Trinley Paljor Sangmor, who is the aunt of Sakya Trinchen and Jetsun Kusho. And it started with a photo in a very small book, which is the biographies of Sachen and the 41st Sakya Trinchen. And I'll show you the photo in a few minutes. And then the other one was a Jetsuma. And this Jetsuma is Chimi Tempe Nima, who's the only woman in the Vajra Yogini guru lineage. So I show you how this worked. So what happened was that I saw this photo and I was very curious who this person was. And you could see her in a little bit older and a little bit younger at the bottom. And but I saw the one that's on the left. And I saw this photo and I looked and I said, well, who is this person? And so then I found out that she was the aunt of Sakya Trinchen and Jetsun Kusho. So then I went up to Sakya Trinchen and I said, you know, I'm very curious about your aunt. I would like to do something, you know, do some research. And he was delighted. He was like more than delighted. I think he was waiting for somebody to approach him for this. So he said, oh, yes, yes, please do this. And this is a great idea and everything like this. So then I started to do a little bit of work on her. I tried to find people who knew her. I interviewed different people and I gave a couple presentations about her. But every time I tried to write about her biography, I never succeeded. I don't know why, but I could never succeed. And it just wasn't gelling. I was very frustrated. And I have to say, so was His Holiness, because he was saying, did you finish yet? Did you finish? No, 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 I'm so sorry. And, but when I started reading about Damo, then I started looking with help of my husband, who's a Tibetan historian. So he's great, Nima Dorje. And we were looking up different things. And then I discovered there's a lot of Jetsumas. You know, this might be self-evident to you, and we know Jyekundo, but I didn't really put it all together that that was a title for all the daughters of the Sakya Khon family. And so then I'm seeing, well, there's this Jetsuma and there's that Jetsuma. And so then I started to become a little bit more interested in the Jetsumas, because I was getting so frustrated with the aunt's biography that it just wasn't working. And so at this time too, it was a long time ago, but I know some of you were there in Walden. His Holiness, I'm talking about the 41st Sakya Trinzen, he was giving a Vajrayogini teaching in the old section, which is the dining room of Walden now. Remember that shrine there? That was the beginning. All right, so I remember that he was asking for questions. And so then I was looking in the Guru lineage of the Vajrayogini, and I see, wow, there's a nun in there, a nun. I wonder who this nun is. So then I remember asking Sakya Trinzen in front of everybody, you know, well, who is this Chimi Tempe Nima? He didn't really know, because he said, well, let me get back to you. And so I thought, okay, that's good. I'll find out more. So it took about 2 years when I went to visit Sakya Trinzen in Rajpur. And then he said, you know, my elder sister wanted some information about her. So I started looking up about who this Chimi Tempe Nima is. And this is what I discovered. So I was like very delighted, because I thought, here we have a single woman in the Vajrayogini lineage, and yet people don't know anything about her. And so this is the two women that inspired this book, Damo Trinli Padra Sangmo and Jetsuma Chimi Tempe Nima. And so let me just show you what this is about. Oh yeah, I'm gonna use this. So then I said, so you see, so these photos, I know some of you have seen these photos before. Oh no, wait, sorry. Well, the photo in the middle is the 39 Sakya Trinzen, and that is the grandfather of Sakya Trinzen and Jyekundo. And this is during one of his meetings, you know, he's all dressed up. And I know some of you have seen the entire photo. It's much more extensive with all the attendants, all the important ministers who work with him and everything. But I think this is maybe the only photo of his younger son. Do you see the young man right next to him? And so this is the uncle of Sakya Trinzen and Jyekundo. And also the father to Damo Trinli Padra Sangmo. Now, she was the second wife of his sons, and the first wife died in childbirth, and then she was brought in, but she couldn't conceive. And so eventually they had to have a third wife, which was her younger sister, Sonam Dolkar, who I'm not really going to talk about today, but I'll talk a little bit about Damo here. And then the other photo of Damo is when she's in, Sakya is in song, and the women have different headdresses. I would say the song headgear is probably the most elaborate and the most cumbersome of all headgears for women in Tibet. and this is what she's wearing. And most likely this is for the enthronement of the 41st Sakya Trinzen in 1959. So I just want to explain these photos a bit. All right, so one of the persons that I interviewed for Damo was Chalyum and Tashilaki, right? The wife of Sakya Trinzen. And so I said, well, what do you remember about Damo? And she didn't know Damo for so many years because she married in 1974 and Damo died in 1975. But this is what she said. She goes, the aunt is the savior of the Sakyas because she was able to find the most qualified lamas for the young Sakya Trinzen and Jetsunmas in Tibet. Timing was everything. And so if you ever read anything about the biographies of Sakya Trinzen or Jetsumas, they're always thanking the aunt. They're thanking the aunt, they're thanking the aunt. And the main reason that they're thanking the aunt is that she really found the best lamas. So she got the great training before some of them passed away or they had to go into exile when things were very, very tough for everyone. So this is one of the quotes that you kind of come across about the aunt, how she's the savior of the Sakyas because of what she did for the two young children, Sakya Trinzen and Jetsumas. And the other Damo, just to let you know, is Damo's Sonam Palki, and she is the wife of Gyanavadra. So Damo, so what the meaning of Damo is a lady, you know, in the very kind of high sense of lady, you know, lady and lord, this type of lady, or the wife of Dakshan, or a great lord. And so this title is given to all the wives who marry into the Sakya Khon family, but it's not exclusive to them. Other Tibetan noble families give this title to their wives too. And so at Sakya Monastery, we always love to talk about Damo Kusho. And so Damo Kusho means venerable or honorable lady. That's Damo Kusho's title. And I put the K in parentheses because you're really supposed to spell it that way, but a lot of times the K gets dropped in the pronunciation. So that's why you see for Damo Kusho written in that way. Now, the life of a Damo. First of all, this was one thing I discovered, which I didn't know anything about before I did this research, is that it's always a secret marriage. You know, you've heard about a lot of arranged marriages in traditional societies, but it was a secret marriage. And I was thinking, why should it be a secret marriage, you know? And this was something I asked Jetsumas. And Jetsumas, you know, she's like looking at me like, you know, well, it should be pretty obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me at all, you know, why it should be a secret marriage. And so the main reason is that Jetsumas said that this is really a spiritual union. It's between partners that are tantric practitioners. The wife is seen as a deity, a wisdom partner, or a rigma. And so it should not be kind of broadcast, you know, wildly that this marriage is taking place. And most of the wives have not a clue that they're getting married, not a clue. Like the Damo that I just told you about, she was brought to the palace, and it's also very few people attend the wedding, very, very few people. And so she was brought to the palace, and that's when she was told that she was going to get married to the two sons. Then later on, when the mother of Sakya Trinzen and Jetsumas, when she gets married, Damo, who is her older sister, just said to Sonam Dokar, she goes, oh, Sonam, I need some help at the palace. Would you mind coming to help me for a while? So Sonam came to the palace. Then suddenly her older sister goes, well, you're going to get married to the two sons. And Sonam goes, what? You know, and so this happens over and over again when you read these stories, that it's always a secret marriage the wives are not included in the conversation whatsoever. And they're very surprised, but of course it's been arranged and they accept it. And but Damo Kusho had a very different marriage. When you read in The Princess of the Land of Snow, there was something, you know, she had signs and dreams, and Dakchen Rinpoche had signs and dreams. And so their marriage was much more unusual because their marriage was both a love marriage and a spiritual marriage. And it wasn't a secret marriage like all of these other marriages that I've been reading about. So they had a very unusual marriage, and but she's the exception. Usually it's not known to the wife until they arrive at the palace. And Adamo, even though she's a spiritual union with the partner, her main job is to do the administrative duties of the entire palace, which is very, very extensive. You know, first it's all the attendants for the family, then a special attendant for the Sakya Trinzen, if the Sakya Trinzen is in that family. Then of course, all the food, you have to supervise all the chefs and the people in charge of the food, then all the horses, all the people that are involved with taking care of the horses and the mules, and it just goes on and on. You know, everything that you can imagine what a palace is, she's in charge of everything. And it's not that she has to do everything herself, but she's the overseer. And so she makes sure that everything runs very, very smoothly. So it's very demanding. And then usually there's a younger wife that joins the older ones. So then there's an overlap so that the older one can train the younger one in these administrative duties. And then another thing which happens quite often in the palace is that there would be all kinds of people visiting the palace, that they would have to take care of the high lamas visiting. The Sakyas have a very, very good connection with Khon. So frequently kings from like Derge would come and to the palace, and then you would have to host them. And then dignitaries would come, Tibetan dignitaries, a lot of British would come and visit. In fact, many of the photos that we have are due to the British when they visited Sakya. Sometimes there would be a few Indian scholars that would show up, not that many, but a few of them. So you would have different dignitaries that would come. And then she was really in charge of making sure that they were well received, you know, well taken care of, finding the appropriate lamas or monks to accompany them to all the different temples that they would like to see and the different people they would like to see. So that was another job that the Damos had. And then, of course, if the Damo husband became a Sakya Trinzen, it became even more because much more visitors, more demands. And so this is the life of a Damo. And so this is, you know, the Damo you know probably the best, Chalyum, Tashi, Laki, except for Damo Kusho. And these are some of the things. Well, first of all, she's a wife, then she's a mother, and this is with the young Ratnavajra and Gyanavajra. I don't know exactly when this photo was taken, but I'd say in the 1980s, because Ratnavajra, the older son, he was born in 1974, so I don't know how old you would think he looks there, maybe 12, 13 or so. But and she's the mother, and then she's the liaison. She always has to work between so many different people. That's another job of the Damo. But maybe you're wondering why her title is Chalyum. Chalyum is that once the wife's husband becomes Sakya Trinzen, she becomes Chalyum. So it's no longer Damo, but you refer to her as Chalyum. And then when they built the palace in India, she was in charge of everything. Just, you know, the whole works of how to build the palace and what to choose and everything. So that was a very, very big job that she had to oversee. Then, of course, she has to serve all the lamas that come to visit, which are quite frequent. And then she deals with a lot of the social and spiritual needs of the people. A lot of times, people don't want to ask things directly to His Holiness. So of course they go through Jangyum and, hope that she will be the intervene for them or help them in some ways that, maybe they would be too shy to ask Sakya Trinzen directly. So these are a lot of her jobs that she does in Rajpur and when she accompanies Sakya Trinzen on the tours. So I just wanted to give you a little sense about one specific Damo. Okay, so now I'm going to move to the Jetsumas. So now the meaning of Jetsumas. So Jetsuma, it's a Sanskrit translation of the Bhattaraka. And it has a lot of meanings, a lot of Sanskrit words have many, many meanings, but in this case really is like venerable woman, woman worthy of worship. This is kind of the more appropriate type of meaning for Jetsuma in this case. And accomplished female master, heroine, those are other words and other meanings for her. So this is what the word means. And I'm going to talk a little bit about. Okay, so now these are two Jetsumas that you probably know, right? Of course, Her Eminence Sakya Jetsunkusho, and then Mindraling Jetsuma Kundras Sering Palden. So these are Jetsumas at birth, because there's two ways to get the title of Jetsumas. You either get it at birth in certain families, and to my knowledge, this seems to be the only two families that have the word Jetsuma when, for daughters. There might be others. I'd be happy to know if you know about them. But these seem to be the only two spiritual families that I know that when the daughter is born, they're automatically given this title of Jetsuma. But of course, the Sakyas have existed much longer. They've existed since the 1200s. So I would say they're probably the oldest spiritual family that have daughters recognized as Jetsumas. And then the Mindraling family, that started, I think, in 1675 or something, around that time. So, it's a fairly old family too, but it's not as old as the Sakya families. So these are the only two Jetsumas that receive this title at birth. And then another way that you can get it is that you can be recognized by a Lama. And the most famous is Jetsuma Tenzing Palmo, right? Who spent 12 years in the cave, and there's a big book about this, and that lives in India today. And I have to say that I'm very glad that she ordered some of the books. She ordered 4 copies for her nuns. So I'm pleased that she knows about the book and that she ordered some copies for her nuns. And then one other way that you could get the title of Jetsuma is that if you're just recognized by the community, that's another way to get it too. And so someone like the Lochen, Chuksep, she was recognized by the community, and then she received the title of Jetsumas. So these are the different ways of receiving the title of Jetsumas. So now these are the 4 major Sakya Jetsumas that I have written about in the book, and I'm going to talk about the top 3. I probably won't get too much time to talk about Jetsun Kusha or Jetsuma Kunka Trinle. I think that's going to be another lecture. But I'm going to talk about the top 3 for a few minutes. So the first one is the one that I've been talking about a bit, is Jetsuma Chimitempe Nima. You can see her date. She lived quite a long time, and she's from the Rinzing Palace. And so there were different palaces in the Sakya family. But then in the end, it divided into the 2 final ones, which were the ones that we know the most, is the Punsok Palace and the Damo Palace. So then the next one is Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo, and she's from the Punsok Palace. And I would say she was an extraordinary Lama. And she just taught so many people, not to say that Jetsuma Nima didn't talk. She taught a lot of people, but it seems like Tamdring Wangmo just loved teaching people. She just taught so many people. That's why I call her the Lama to all, because she was really, she seemed to be very, very engaged in teaching. In contrast, Khon Pema Trinley from the Doma Palace, she taught in the beginning, but then later on, she didn't seem to be interested in teaching. She kind of retreated in the cave and became kind of a yogini. And then now we all know about Jetsun Kusho. And, you know, she was also another hidden yogini, right? When she first lived in Canada, nobody knew that, who she was, or that she was a Lama and everything. And it really took, I think, the prodding of a lot of different early students, especially it seems women students. Where are those women Lamas? We want those women Lamas. And so, you know, I was a student of Deshe Rinpoche, and I remember they kept asking Deshe Rinpoche, and then finally I heard that Deshe Rinpoche and His Holiness Sakya Trinzen said to Jetsun Kusho, hey, how about teaching? You know, there's a lot of women that want to receive teachings from women Lamas. So we were very, very fortunate that Jetsun Kusho lived in Canada, could travel to America very easily, and we could all receive teachings from her. And now we have the young one, Jetsuma Kunga Trinley, and I think she's going to be a fantastic Lama. She seems to be able to do so many things, and she already went all the way to Tibet and gave lots of teachings and blessings, and, you know, so I see a very, very bright future for the young Jetsuma. So these are the 5 major Sakya Jetsumas. Okay, so now this is another very unusual thing for about the Sakya Jetsumas. You know, I know a lot of you have read many stories and biographies about different Tibetan women who do practices. And so when you read about some of these Tibetan women, they really have a hard time. You know, they're not supported by their family. They have to suffer kind of discrimination, you know, like you don't need to practice, just be that wife or that mother, and that should be enough for you. And you don't need to do other things with your lives, you know. And so I'm not belittling being a wife or a mother, but I'm just saying that some of these women would have liked to gone to a cave and just become that yogini in the cave, but they were not given the opportunity to do this at all. But the Sakya Jetsumas are completely supported by the family. And I thought it was, you know, the Sakya, there's a Sakya government in Tibet, and I thought it was the government that gave the money. But Jetsun Kusho made it very clear to me, no, it's the families. It's the Doma Palace family, it's the Punsuk Palace family. They supported their own daughters, and they're the ones that provided everything for them. But they're a lot like Tukuls in the respect that they have their own residence, Labrangs. And they don't live in nunneries. The Jetsumas do not live in nunneries. They live in their own Labrangs. And these Labrangs are saved from one generation to another, so that this is always kept for the next generation. They are not sold to anybody else. They are kept for the next generation, just like a Tukul's Labrang would be kept for the next Tukul. And they also have an income. They have fields. Well, this is all in Tibet I'm talking about. They had fields dedicated to them that were only for these specific Labrangs. There was also people that took care of their animals, which provided, you know, many things for them. And so this was all reserved and preserved from one generation to another. And it's very rare. It's very rare to find in a family for generations and for centuries that support their daughters in spiritual practice like this. And so, and likewise, they were given opportunity to practice just like the sons equally. There was absolutely no difference. And this is something Jetsun Kusho loves to emphasize, that while she was in Tibet, the 41st Sakya Trinzen and herself received everything equally. There was no difference. Oh, you're a woman, you're a man. No, no, no. It was all equal. And so this is another thing which I really like to emphasize, that these Sakya families are really quite special in this way. The way they take care of their daughters and the way they help them become really very successful practitioners if they wish to be that way. And but the other thing which is interesting is, even though they had the same privileges as the sons, they didn't have the same obligations, especially if one of those sons might become Sakya Trinzen. You know all the obligations that you have as Sakya Trinzen, whereas the Jetsumas didn't have these obligations. They could do practice as much as they wanted. And they had their own residence, and in the residence there were attendants. So everything was, set up for them very, very well. And it was their choice if they wanted to engage in very sustained practice or not so much, and Jetsun Kusho goes, as long as, you didn't create problems, you could do what you want. And so, so that's what they did. And so in Tibet, though, they were encouraged to be nuns. They were not encouraged to marry whatsoever. And even, Jetsun Kusho, like she was in India and things have changed completely at that time because they were refugees and everything. When her aunt, this Damo Trinley Paljara Sangwell, said, you get married. She goes, no, I'm not getting married. I'm going to stay a nun. But then, she was finally convinced to do that. And then what's interesting with Jetsun Kusho is that she married Se Kusho from the Luding family, and then she ends up, one of her sons, is Luding Rinpoche. So it's very interesting. Jetsun Kusho has kind of an unusual life, but also she has unusual circumstances because she's kind of that transition between the Jetsumas that grew up in Tibet and now the Jetsumas who now live, in the West. And I'm very curious to see what this young new Jetsuma is going to do with her life. And I don't think there's any Labrangs in India. So I'm not quite sure where she's going to live, or if they're going to create Labrangs, or they might just, she might just live in the nunnery. I'm kind of curious how this will all develop, we'll watch it all together. So I think all of you know all these places, but anyway, I'll point this out. So, this is where Sakya is, right? It's around this area. And then the other big area, which I'm going to talk briefly about, is where there's a lot of Sakya hold, is this area. It's near the Yangtze River, it's in Khon, and there's a few very major monasteries, which I'm going to show you. So, this is Tibet, as you all know. And then this is a bit of a close-up. You could see here is Sakya, here's Noor, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. I just mentioned Luding Rinpoche. So he's from Noor. And there's, and Chimi Tempe Nima, she has a lot of connections to Noor Lamas. I found that very interesting. And I'll talk a tiny bit about this later on. Khao Drak Dzong, which is a very famous place, not too far from Sakya, though I've never visited myself, where there's a four-faced Mahakala, and it's a big, big holy site. And this is where the caves are for the Doma Palace and the Punsok Palace. And this is where Khon Pema Trinley kind of stayed at the end of her life. So those are some of the things I just wanted to point out. And the Lakan Chemo that was established in the 13th century, such an amazing building, and massive pillars inside, so many images. And luckily this wasn't destroyed, because it had a strong connection with the Chinese emperor, which is really a Mongolian emperor, Kublai Khan, and his connection to Sakya Jetsunmas. And so the Lakan Chemo was not destroyed, but my husband and I, we went to Tibet for the first time in 1983. Everything else was erased, everything. It was really a tragedy when I saw all of this. But anyway, this is the Lakan Chemo, and this is the great library inside. Can you imagine this library? I mean, I don't know how, I didn't see it. I missed it somehow. I don't know how I missed it, but I missed it. But anyway, I keep reading about it and hearing about it. And there's so many Sanskrit texts in there. And this is when the Indian scholars start, 1900s, late 1800s, they come because they hear about this drove of Sanskrit texts and they want to see it. And there's so much preserved. And I still think there's still a lot in the, in the Lakan Chemo, the great temple now. I don't think everything was removed, but somebody who might be more informed than me can tell me. And this comes from, a tanka, as you could see. So this is the Lakan Chemo down here, right? This is the Lakan Chemo down here. And then I mentioned that there's some of those residents of the Jetsumas, the Labrangs. So some of the Labrangs are in this kind of area right here. And, not exactly. Jeff Schoening, who has great maps, he could show you better than I can, but in this kind of general area so that you can kind of see. Because I remember Jesun Kusho, she wanted another Labrang, which is very close to the Doma Podrang, but her aunt said, no, you should go to this Labrang, which is in this area, Tashi Labrang. And Jesun Kusho is going, no, I'm not going to go to that place because underneath my Labrang is a protector's temple, and it's very noisy, and I don't want to be in this noisy place. I want to be in the Labrang, which is close to the Doma Podrang. So since this is red, I'm making some sort of guess. This might be, a protector's place, and it might be in this general area. And there's a couple of Labrangs, right? The Punsok Palace had 5, and the Doma Palace had 5. And there were a few of these Labrangs in this particular area. So you can kind of see. And it's off the map, all the way down at the bottom. That would be where the Punsok Palace and the Doma Palace would be. And so you really can't see this river. You see this tiny river. This is the Grom River, which divides, divides the two parts. So the Lakan Chemo is in the south part, and this is all the northern monastery, which is more the tantric monastery. And this one is the Shitok, which means the base. Doesn't mean 4 levels, but the base. And this was the winter palace. I lost my little pointer. This was the winter palace of the Sakya Trinzins. And so even though they're all in Sakya, the other palaces, if you became Sakya Trinzin, you moved to this palace in the winter because it was a little bit warmer than the other 2 palaces. And so I just wanted to point those out to you. And I don't know, I got this photo, and I think this is from a long time ago because I was looking at some more recent photos. No, what I'm talking about, it's after 1983, because there was nothing in 1983, but this might have been done, I don't know, in the 90s or something, because I've looked at more recent photos and it looks very different than this. So, but this is that same general area of the northern monastery. All right, so now back to the Jetsumas, and what are some of the commonalities that they have? So they're all trained to be excellent practitioners. And as I said, everything is provided for their success. And they lived in Labrangs, not nunneries. They became lamas, and they taught some very important male lamas. And they all taught Lamdre, except for the young one that, I bet you at some point she'll probably teach Lamdre, but it's a little too soon for her. But they all taught Lamdre. And like Tamdring Wangmo, that I tell you, she was a very important Lama. She taught Lamdre many times. And she taught both Lamdre, Sokche and Lopche. And they're all considered to be emanations of Vajrayogini. Also, Tamdring Wangmo, I'll tell you a story about her as Vajravarahi, but they're all considered this emanation of Vajrayogini. And I don't know enough about Chimi Tempe Nima's life because really there's so little information written down that you have to kind of glean for Chimi Tempe Nima's life. But I know that both Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo and Khon Pema Trinley face discrimination as females, regardless of their high status. And what are their connections to each other? Sometimes as teachers, sometimes as recognizing tukuls who became lamas to the next generation. Sometimes they visited the same places as Jyekundo Monastery and Zongsar Monastery in Khon. All right, so now let's start with Chimi Tempe Nima. So she was an extraordinary lama. She taught many people, including 4 Sakya Trinzins, can you imagine? And their wives, the daughters, the sons. So it's really, she taught many, many people. And then she also taught Nor Monastery Lamas. One of them was the 44th Nor Tartse Champanamka Chime, whose reincarnation is the famous non-sectarian or Rime Lama Jamyang Khenze Wangpo. So, you know, that's a quite important Lama that she taught. And then she also recognized that, these Nor Tartse, that's one of the Labrangs. There's like 4 main residents for the abbots in Nor. So Tartse is one, and this other one here, she recognized the 53rd Pende, that's another Labrang of abbot, Kunga Tempe Lodro, who becomes a very important Lama to Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo. So you see kind of their interconnections in different ways that you might not expect. Now, Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo, as I call her, Lama to all, I tell you, she taught. And so one of her teachers was this Nor Kungatembe Lodro that I just talked about, and who was residing in Jyekundo Monastery, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes. And then another one of her teachers was this famous Jamyang Khenze Wangpo, and she also received teachings at Zongsar Monastery from him. And then Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo was the root lama to the 39 Sakya Trinzin, who I showed you a photo of, the grandfather of the 41st Sakya Trinzin in Jetsun Kusho. So she was his root lama. So you could see how it's all really connected. And she was the root lama to his sister, Khon Pema Trinley. So she was a very important lama amongst the Sakya family, and she really bridged those two, the Punsok Palace and the Damo Palace, together in that way. And she gave them many, many teachings, both to the 39 Sakya Trinzin and Khon Pema Trinley. And then I'll tell you this story about her, appearing as Vajravarahi. It's in the book, but it's a pretty funny story. So let me just show you the slides. Okay, so both Khon Pema, Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo and Khon Pema Trinley stayed at this Jyekundo Monastery. Jyekundo Monastery is in Jyekundo. That's why it's short for Jyekundo. This is in Khon, one of the most important Sakya monasteries in Khon. Of course, this is a rebuilt one, but this has always been one of the main strongholds of the Sakyas in Khon itself. And women are prohibited to stay overnight, but Khon Pema Trinley could stay there, Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo could stay there, and also Damo Kusho could stay there because Daksha Rinpoche, when they went, I think it was 1954 maybe, or 52, I forget the dates, but when they went to Khon, they stayed there to receive teachings. And so Damo Kusho could stay there because she was the wife of Daksha Rinpoche, but Damo Kusho's mother was not allowed to stay there. So they're very, very strict about any woman staying there overnight. And they're also very strict about something else, about monks talking, gossiping outside the monastery. They don't want any of this kind of gossip. So it was a very strict monastery in many ways, but these two Jetsumas stayed, and they stayed in the same room. So it became like a very blessed room. And in my book, I talk about Draupern, and Draupern is Lansé Sakya's father, that he visited that room and he described it to me. And so I highly doubt that it exists now because it's probably destroyed. But anyway, this was very interesting that they regarded them so highly and basically made that room a shrine. And so I just want to point out that importance as well. And then also, Tamdring Wangmo received Lamdre Sokje from Nor Kunga Tempe Lodro at Jyekundo Monastery. So it's a very important monastery in that regard. And now her other Lama who she received teachings from, Tamdring Wangmo, is this very famous Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, one of the big Rimé masters of in Tibetan Buddhism. And we know very specifically that she received the lion face Sima Mukha empowerment plus the transmissions from him. And he's supposed to be one of those owners of this transmission, you know, like, I don't know how to explain it, but like some lamas are like the senior Luden Rinpoche. He's like the owner of Vajrayogini teachings. Like, he's one of the best ones to receive Vajrayogini teachings from. So this Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, one of the things that he's the owner of is this lion-faced goddess, empowerment and transmission. And supposedly she received other teachings from him, but I don't know the names of them. I never could find them out. But sometimes also new biographies come out and then you discover other things. So we don't know, maybe there'll be more things to uncover. And she received that at Dzongsar Rinpoche, Dzongsar Monastery, which is another major Sakya monastery in Khon, which is, I think I might have a map. Not yet. Okay. Oh, so what is the story of Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo? So the story of Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo is that while she was in Khon, when she was, because she stayed there quite a long time, and while she was in Khon, there was a Chinese official that wanted to see her. And the main reason he wanted to see her was that she was supposed to be very beautiful. But he didn't have a very good reputation. He was kind of a womanizer. And everybody was saying, no, don't let him come in, forget it. We don't want to have any trouble with this Chinese official and everything. But Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo said, oh no, it's fine, just let him come. The attendant, no, please, don't do this. No, fine. So he comes, and he comes, you know, in the correct way, and he's going to offer a kata to her. And he stops and he runs away. And so everybody's wondering, this is Sakya Jetsunmas who told me this story. So everybody's wondering, what in the world happened? So then later we find out that when he first entered, he saw a beautiful woman, just what he was expecting, just what he wanted, right? But in a very short amount of time, that head of the human became a boar. You know, Vajravarahi has that boar's head, right? So became a boar. Man, he like ran out of there in 2 seconds, and he never gave any trouble to Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo. So you see, this is how she handled the womanizer. So she's quite powerful. Oh yeah, wait, hold on. Where am I going? Okay, so now let me tell you a little bit about Kapkon Pema Trinley. So, okay, so as I mentioned to you, that she received teachings from Jetsuma Tamdring Wangmo, who was one of her root lamas. She also received the Compendium of Tantras and the Compendium of Sadhanas, two very massive teachings from Jamyang Lotse Wangpo, whose teacher was Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. So you see, so Tamdring Wangpo's Lama was Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, and then his student is Jamyang Lotse Wangpo, and now the next generation receives it from his student. So I just wanted to kind of point this out. And then another thing, which I was very, very happy to know, and I could get firsthand knowledge about this, is that she gave the Vajrayogini teachings to the third Geshe Rinpoche. Now, unfortunately, when Geshe Rinpoche was alive, I didn't even know about the Jetsumas, so I never could ask him, because I'm sure he would have had a lot of stories to tell, right? But unfortunately, I didn't. But I did get the experience from Anichimi and Damo Kusho about when they visited and met Kapkon Pema Trinley. So I'll just show you that in a few minutes. And then she also had this discrimination. So her story is, again in Khon, she's teaching. And in this area, it's the Galupas are kind of in charge of this area, and they don't want anybody teaching in their area, and certainly not a woman. So they send these guys, the dopes, the monastic police, these guys, they're like, first, the ones that are chosen are very tall. Then, they have these like heavy shoulder pads, just like the football players. So they're very intimidating. And these are technically not weapons, those sticks, but, if you get hit with one of these, I would say it's a weapon, right? Because monks are not supposed to have weapons, but basically. And then the other thing that they would carry would be big metal keys that they would, if they need to control anybody. So they sent these dopes to check out Kapkon Pema Trinley. And so she's giving a transmission in a temple, and they show up, but she pretends that she doesn't see them. And so what she does is that she continues to do the transmission. And then as she's doing the transmission, she has a ritual vase, right, that she's using for the transmission. And she has her nun's robes on. And so she had to arrange the robe, she's like putting over shoulder, and she's still holding the vase. So the story is that she puts the ritual vase on the sunbeam, and the vase is being held by the sunbeam as she's, arranging her robe. So now these dopes see this. Their minds completely change. They go, wow, we're not going to beat her up. We're going to get her blessings. And so that's the story about how she handled the men and that were going to give her problems. And so the final thing, I'm going to end with this, is the firsthand account of how Damo Kusho received the teachings from Kapkon Pema Trinley with her uncle, Geshe Rinpoche, and her aunt, Anichimi. And, Geshe Rinpoche III, his previous reincarnation had given the Vajrayogini teachings to Pema Trinley. So he wanted to receive them again from her. And by the time he made it to Sakya, she was already living in that cave, which I pointed out, which is not too far from Sakya. And she was living in the cave, and Geshe Rinpoche came and requested the Vajrayogini teachings, which she gave, to Geshe Rinpoche, Anichimi, and Damo Kusho. Now, Damo Kusho is very young at that time. I think she's only 14, 15 years old. She doesn't really know what's going on. But I asked her, I said, what was your feeling about, Kapkon Pema Trinley? And this is what she says. She goes, that lady has special powers. She could see inside of you. She wasn't looking outside. you know, and she goes, not that many people have these special powers. Someone like the Dalai Lama, is that you really feel that kind of presence. And so this is what Damo remembers of Pema Trinley. And then Anichimi, you know, most of you who knew Anichimi, she's pretty reserved. She doesn't, you know, doesn't talk too much or anything like this. And so when I asked her about Pema Trinley, first, like when she describes what she looks like, she's like, you know, very matter of fact. Then I said, well, what was the feeling? What was the feeling? She goes, oh, they were chatting away, Geshe Rinpoche and Khon Pema Trinley. I was like so happy to see them, you know, and they treated each other so well and so equally. This really brought me a lot of joy. And I said, well, how did you feel about this? And then she stopped and she goes, when I looked at Pema Trinley, all my thoughts ceased. And then she stopped. She didn't, you know, and then she goes, the feeling was very good. She had a very strong faith in Khon Pema Trinley. And so I was very pleased, you know, to get this firsthand report of Khon Pema Trinley from these wonderful people that you all know. So, and this was the map again. This is where the cave was, in this area. And so I'm going to end with here, with a beautiful photograph of Geshe Rinpoche and Anichimi. And to be continued, maybe in the summer, right? We'll have a lecture about Jetsun Kusho and the young Jetsuma, and maybe all born in Kachari.
Wonderful. So if anybody has any questions, would you like them to put them in the chat box?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Yes,
No,
and then we can.
Allowed to talk.
No.
Oh, I think we've been. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, so Damala received this teaching. Was it from her or the other mentioned in section 1?
What are we talking about? Vajrayogini?
Alexa? Vajrayogini? The last slide.
Oh yeah, this
Yeah.
was in you know, when Damo was around 14, 15 years old. And it's in this Saint of Seattle, right? Geshe Rinpoche's biography. You could read about that there for sure. And so this is in Sakya when she's quite young. I'm going to put my light on. Excuse me.
Teresa,
Yeah.
during this, you may want to let people know they could possibly unmute like I just did if they want to ask a question, possibly.
Is that okay, or would you prefer the chat? It's up.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, I'm fine. I was telling you, I didn't really know how long it would take. So, but now we have time if people are interested. And I see Labrang. Labrang basically is residence. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. It's a residence, you know. You a lot of times you hear the reincarnation, the Tukul Labrang is the residence of the Tukul, or the abbot's residence. That's what a Labrang is. Yes.
Elizabeth?
Oh, yes. What's this? Yes.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, this is a really minor question, but when you were talking about the dop-tops and those large
Yeah.
things, and then you said something that I thought you said key.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you tell what that is? Because I think that maybe other people might know what could happen with that key other than being used for locking or unlocking something, but was it used in a sort of a wrathful way? Or
Yeah,
what?
yeah, like a weapon.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, huge metal keys. If you ever see some of those old blocks from Tibet, these keys are big, you know.
About how big?
I don't know. At least the size of a computer with,
Oh, okay.
since we all have computers, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so technically you're not supposed to have weapons, but you know, they're the monastic police, so they have to enforce things certain ways. And so they had those major sticks, you know, and then sometimes they had those keys also. I don't know exactly how mean they were, but they could be intimidating for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, something.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is from Dre Pong and Lhasa. So those are those two guys right there.
Oh.
The question I have is those lab drungs in Sakya, were they those stone buildings that were across the river around the bombed out area?
You know, though, you couldn't really tell like a Labrang unless you, like they were just like all the other buildings.
Yeah,
There
they
was,
were like houses, right? But they were on the
yeah, they
other,
were houses. Yes.
were they on the other side of the river?
A lot of those Labrangs were on the other side of the river, but the one that Jetsunkusha wanted was a fairly new Labrang that was built very close to the Damo Palace. And the one thing too that she said that those other Labrangs, you know, like how you have the kind of the gray, the white, and the red stripes, right? That a lot of those in the northern area did not have that kind of painting. And the one that was near the Doma Palace had that painting. So she wanted that. But the main reason she wanted to have that Labrang, that it was close to her family, especially Sakya Trinzen. So she wanted that Labrang. And in the end, she got the Labrang, but she was, you know, 16 or something. No, maybe a little bit older. But then they lost Tibet. So she really didn't live there very long at all. Does that help, Sandra?
Well, I went into one of those places and met some 16-year-olds that were nuns. And they were, you know, the conditions weren't very good. So it was just after you were there, right? So that's all I can contribute. But yeah, in that area there had some sort of pull on me, even though I had never knew anything about Buddhism.
Yeah.
I got stuck in the Sakya after that.
Yes. All right, thank you.
Julie from Australia says thank you. And Alexa missed the beginning of the class and says, might you be able to share a little bit about your work?
Okay, well, thank you from Australia. I don't know what time it is. It must be late or early. But thank you very much for listening. And well, this took me a long time to do. I don't even want to think about how long, but probably 15 years, because I was working full time. And then I had a very unusual job, though it helped me in other ways for this book, is that I was a professor of Asian studies, and I had to take students to Asia every 3 years for the entire academic year. So every 3 years I was in Asia, which was, I liked it, I enjoyed it, I actually loved the work, but it was very disruptive in terms of trying to write a book, because you couldn't really carry your stuff with you and things. But the positive side was that I was able to get very good interviews since I was in Asia. Like I got Jayum Tashilaki's cousin, who was the director in Sikkim of Tibetology. Like I probably would have never met him if I had not gone to Sikkim and kind of sought people out that might have known something about the ant. So being able to go every 3 years was helpful in that way, but it prolonged the writing. And, you know, I've His Holiness, I don't know how many times I saw him and he asked me, are you finished? Are you almost finished? And I had to say, no, I'm so sorry. I'm still working. But finally I finished. So I'm very glad. I like the way the book looks. a lot of friends contributed to the helping me pay for the design and the printing of the book. So, and I think it turned out well. I'm very happy with it. And of course, so many other people helped, which I've listed in the book because I couldn't have done it myself. But my next project, so some of you could definitely help me with this, is that I want to write a short biography about Anichimi, because I think she's another hidden yogini, you know, and I know a lot of you have known Anichimi. So if you have any stories about Anichimi, I would be very delighted to receive them. You could just let me know and I'll contact you, interview you, whatever you like. And the other person, oh, now I've even forgot her name right now, is Chogi Trinjin's sister, who I'm having very, very hard time finding any information about her. But if you know anybody who knows her well or has any—
Cyrus, Elizabeth, excuse
Yes.
me for interrupting.
Yes.
Cyrus might know because he lived with Chogi Trichin for a while.
Okay,
They
okay,
wanna-
good. Yes, okay, I'll definitely contact him. So this is my next project. I like to write about these two women, and I like to kind of make contrast because both of them were sisters of, you know, very important lamas. Of course, Chogi Trinjin a little bit more important than Geshe Rinpoche. And so there's some similarities and then there's some differences between the two of them. And so I'd like to write about them. Does that help you? About what I was doing? Yes?
I had a quick question to go off of your work and information in research.
Yes.
I was curious, as you've been doing these projects and interviewing and researching and traveling while working and studying and those things, as the lineage and teachings continue and the next generation is coming up, what does it look like with doing all of the research and following along with the differences in people kind of coming with the new teachings and in different areas of the world as places are, I don't know how to phrase this, how there are different schools and different places of study. I'm just curious what that looks like as far as all of the research that goes into it and the different stories that you've heard with attendants and families and all of that going around it.
I don't know. I think it's very hopeful. You know, you could just see it at the Sakya Monastery with the grandsons. I mean, they're all great. They're getting trained so well, and you know, and they're all becoming great lamas. And I don't know about any of the Jetsumas though, right? In the Punsok Palace area. I don't know if any of them are getting trained, but certainly in the Damo Palace, those Jetsumas are getting trained, and the Jungses, the sons are getting trained. So the next generations of the Sakya Khon family, I think they're all, you know, there's good lamas coming up. And then we as Westerners, we have our own kind of maybe almost obligations to, you know, to do our practices and try to do our best in kind of supporting the Dharma and spreading the Dharma if we're able to do that. And because eventually we have to own it, you know. And if you study about the history of Buddhism, it takes quite a few hundreds of years before Buddhism becomes really part of a new country. You know, now things are speeding up with technology, but it will take a while, and we're all part of that. And I think, you know, we do what we can. I don't know if that answered what you were interested in finding out.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for
Mhm. Yes.
Gail Frederickson said it was very nice to see a picture of Anichimi. And Cynthia says, wonderful idea, your new project. Alyssa, we have at the end of the lecture, we'll have a link. So I believe these are out of print already. So they're gonna have a second printing of this book.
Well, I'm not sure. We've been talking to Shambhala Publications because they have shown an interest in printing this book.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So, and because one thing was that some people wanted ebooks, and I have to say, learning to find the designer, doing the printing, that was a lot of work, but it worked out all well. But the distribution was a lot of work. I have to thank Mike Roach, Victoria Scott, Ani Kunga, April. It was a lot of work, the distribution. So we didn't want to undertake trying to figure out how to do an ebook. So when Shambhala said they're interested and they would do the ebook, I think we're going to go with Shambhala, if they offer the contract.
Okay.
Yeah. So we won't do a second printing ourselves. And if Shambhala offers the contract, I would say in about a year it would be available.
Okay. So there isn't any now, or maybe
we don't have any. We printed 1,300, and I think in about 3 weeks they were gone to 37 countries.
I know a lot of people here.
37 countries. So I'm kind of happy they're all over the world. And we were able to give a lot to the nuns and some to the monks and Luden Ken. And so, they're all over the place. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's what we're planning to do. Yes.
And that's so fantastic, Elisabeth. I'm just so excited. That's wonderful.
Well, thank you.
If you would like to be notified of the progress on the second printing, physical books as well as ebooks will be available. And you can go to the Stop and Fund website and click on here on the home page or the news page or the donate page. And fill out a very short form and leave your email address. And then as soon as we have an update as to when things will be available, but it probably will be in around a year through Shambhala, but then you'll be the first to know. If you would like a copy for yourself, if you're interested in ebook or whatever the case might be, you'll be on the update list, a specific update list.
So that is in the chat right now. If you want to copy that link, if anybody's interested, the link Victoria was just mentioning. And Lee has a comment. If you'd like to comment.
I'm not sure who this Jetsuma that we're referring is. The young Jetsuma. Is that who we're talking about here? Because Khandro Rinpoche's niece. Maybe we're talking about somebody else. I'm not sure who that person is.
Oh, yeah, I missed that one.
You see,
so Mary Lee.
Yeah, Lee. Yeah, Lee Miller. Yes, I don't know if you could explain that a little bit better. I would appreciate that.
Hi, thank you. I don't really know anything about the Sakya lineage or the genealogies, but I was fascinated to hear about them. So my question isn't particular to any one Jetsuma, but I practice in a different lineage, and so it's really interesting for me to hear about how these Jetsumas faced some gender-based discrimination, but also had access to so much opportunity and support and encouragement and became wonderful Lamas. And I'm wondering, somewhat unique to the Sakya school of Tibetan Buddhism. And then I'm also wondering if that has any implication for the way we tend to think about the roles for women in Tibetan Buddhism in general, and specifically if they've been able to, if they have been interested in formulating Tantra from a particularly female perspective, or if they shed light on these kind of debates about the women's side of participating in consort practice, which can get really polarized, particularly in Western Sangha and academic discourses, as like on one extreme that there are just women who are exploited, and on the other side of the spectrum that they are absolutely equals in pursuit of advancing spiritual practice along with their male partners. So I'm just wondering whether there's specific Sakya lineage kind of commentary or scholarly debate on the role of women in this way that might be useful for our contemporary context, where we're really concerned with the role of women, historically speaking, and in the present. I know it's a big topic. It's a big question,
it is
but
a
it's just
topic.
it's just
And,
interesting to me to hear from a different lineage, if there's some more information. Or,
Well, the main female Lama is Jetsumas, and I don't think she talks in those terms too much. If you know Jetsumas, she's a very kind of no nonsense, very practical kind of person that she goes, yes, of course you have to practice, and you should practice, and you should make the time for practice. But she goes, even if, look at me, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I work, and in the past, now she's retired, but you just have to make the effort if you can make the effort. But she doesn't really talk too much, I don't think, about some of these problems, especially some of those scandals that have come up, in, I don't know, in the last 10 years or something with certain lamas and everything. And so I wouldn't say Jetsumas addresses this issue, but I think, amongst us, some of us talk about that, and but I think it's still a little private. There's not that much public discussion, and I know it should be a little bit more than this, but I myself, I also don't talk about it too much. And but the main thing is I think in some ways you also have to kind of check out the Lama. It's important to do that. So maybe some other people might like to join into this conversation. Yes.
Elisabeth, I just asked you a question. Can you check? Can you check before can you see that?
No, not really, no.
Let me write it again real quick.
Oh, about the YouTube site?
Yes.
Oh yeah, that would be fine.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to put you on the spot. Somebody had asked if they can watch this recording, and we needed your permission to put.
Yeah,
it
that
on
would be
something on
fine.
Okay, good. Okay, so you'll be shortly after, maybe give it a little bit like a week or something, and right, Adrienne, do you think? Where are you? Okay, yeah, and it should be posted on the YouTube site?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just didn't want to.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll end here, right? Shall we end here?
Sure, does anybody else have any questions?
Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Yes,
and
Teresa.
Teresa.
Thank you. I really
was
appreciate
great.
you all.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thanks.
I love
So,
Thank
so
you.
we will be having a part two.
Yeah, we'll have part two. in the
Part two,
summer,
okay, next
which will be
quarter.
about
Okay,
Jetsumas and the young
wonderful.
Jetsumas. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye,
I can't see all
everybody.
of you. I have to see. Yeah.
That is
Now
great
I
to
see.
hear.
Yeah, let me see all of you guys. Oh, yes.
We had 59. 59.
Bye.
Yeah, I have to
you.
see you now. All right, good.
Nice to find out where like all about you, because you come and you're also very discreet. So it was nice to hear you give us a lecture talk. So do come back.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Again, very much. Really interesting information.
Okay. Until next time.
Yes, good night.
Sorry
Good
for
night.
everybody, right? Sorry for everybody.